Hail, Internet! It's Paul. It's Matt! The Dork Lords. We are here today talking about the Lazarus Project, Season 2, Episode 5. We open back at the Time Break Initiative, shortly after they kidnap Janet. Robin Lerner speaks with her. They know each other. He says it must be like she's seeing a ghost, and that he'd heard that Wes told everyone that he'd taken his own life. Janet wants to see her daughter. He tells her he's got a proposition for her, and he says, "You remember Operation Midnight?" which we heard about last episode. We cut to 2012, and we learn that Ross and Janet were assigned to kill Dr. Gray and destroy the lab. So the present-day version, the current Janet, actually killed Dr. Gray, at least in the first iteration of this timeline. We end with the team's time machine plane landing in 2012, 4 days before Operation Midnight. We cut to the lab. The scientist, Dr. Gray, and Janet are all there, and Janet says, I assume that's current Janet, and Janet says she has an idea. Credits. So, Paul.
Matt.
What'd you think of Episode 5?
I enjoyed it. Another, 8, 9 there. It was interesting to go back and see all that stuff that we didn't have any conception of. They introduced all those scientists at the beginning of the season, so we now got to see all of them sort of working together. So that was all good. Although, it didn't really make me. It actually took me a couple of views to get some subtleties. Like I didn't really appreciate that Becky, that her seeing her mother plead with Russ was not the one that she was thinking of. It was actually a different version of her mother.
Right, that's the 2012 Janet.
What's the one that exists before she was her mother?
What this means is that there was an old version of Operation Midnight and then a second version of Operation Midnight.
Right, correct.
I have a feeling we're about to get a third version of Operation Midnight. But
yes.
So Wes moved up the date of Operation Midnight so she could, still caught everybody off guard, essentially. And that's become the new reality. That's the second Operation Midnight.
Right.
So current Becky remembers that conversation that Ross and 2012 Janet had during the second version of Operation Midnight, which I think means that the only person who is alive, at least temporarily, who remembers the first version of Operation Midnight would be current Janet, assuming she could survive, the night. But it's interesting because there is this version that we got to see in this episode that I think now is not.
The essence of it is that the doctor was killed. In the first version, it was Janet that killed him. In the second, it was Ross.
Yeah, that's one of the big changes, is that Ross shoots Dr. Gray instead of Janet because Dr. Gray recognizes Janet. It's like, oh, Janet! And that obviously would throw you off.
Yeah, and that's why she was saying, hey, maybe something more is happening here, and please don't do it.
What's particularly interesting about this episode is, so we've got current Janet goes back to 2012 to try to work with Gray to create the time machine per Lerner. And she knows what's happened. She knows what's coming. She knows that, there's Operation Midnight. I know I'm going to have to shoot Dr. Gray. And so she has this big moral conundrum in this episode.
Yeah. And she didn't even anticipate what a moral conundrum she would have. She's like, I'm going to have to let this woman die. And it's like, and didn't even think about, I'm going to have to make sure that this woman dies.
Yeah.
It's like, you're afraid of this woman? Oh, the woman that's going to kill you? You don't have to be afraid of her.
Yeah.
She's a crank.
Yeah. She's a crank. Well, that scene's interesting too. But just to the point, so if she doesn't kill Dr. Gray, per the timeline, she fears, and probably rightly so, that she won't have her daughter Becky in the new timeline. Right. It'll change things so irreparably that everything will change. And Becky, I'm not sure what would happen to Becky.
Right.
I feel like old Becky would still be. Anyway, whatever. So Dr. Gray has to die, according in Janet's mind, unless Janet and Gray can perfect the time machine within 4 weeks. And so that's her idea. Is like, if I can do this if I can perfect this in 4 weeks, then I think I can keep her alive, but also everything,
I don't know about that.
You don't think that? I thought that was where her whole modus operandi was. Let's finish this in 4 weeks.
I think let's finish 4 weeks just so I can do this thing and save my daughter. I don't think she was thinking that she was going to save her. It's just sort of like, wouldn't it be terrible if I did all that and I still didn't have the answer? That's how I interpret it.
But
it's
would
like,
it?
I need this woman's help to figure it out.
Okay, so you feel like she's motivated more by trying to figure out time travel. I thought she was trying to be like, if I can figure this out, then I essentially can get rid of the reason why all these people are dying. I don't know. Maybe you're right, because it would still screw with the timeline.
Yeah, it would still screw with the timeline. I think she...
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
But I think that's also why she pretends that Wes is just a crank. Because she's like, if I say, she represents a big threat, then that means, maybe I should step back. And no. We have only 2 days to do this, or whatever it is, some amount of days. So they do perfect the time machine, but Wes moves up that date of Operation Midnight, meaning that Gray is still killed and the lab is still destroyed anyway. Current Janet hides the plans for the perfected machine in the wall, which are the plans that the 2024 team uses to create a time machine. And then current Janet is killed back in 2012. Anyway, so it's even tough to talk about. I'm like, oh my God,
yes, it is, actually.
Where am I?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is the reality at the moment, that Ross and 2012 Janet invaded the lab a few days earlier than the original version. Ross shot Dr. Gray. Present-day Janet was killed along with Bryson. Becky survived, was taken, for medical care or whatever. And I forgot what happened to 2012 Janet. She survived. She's got to have Becky so that Becky can then come back to 20. So, right. So 2012 Janet survived that incident, along with Ross, obviously, who gets a burn on the arm.
Right.
There are so many variables. It sounds crazy, this thing. The amount of... I mean, what if Ross died? What if Wes died in this... And then you go back to 2012 and you kill Wes. That means, I think, none of the Lazarus Project activities since 2012 would have occured. Anyway, it's kind of like one of those, like, oh my God, chicken and the egg paradoxy things.
I don't envy them in the writer's room there.
What's that board look like?
Board, right? Exactly.
I put this card here. Yes. And we get this thing where Bryson is pretending to be Janet's husband. They pretend to be a family. They get along pretty well. I have to say, she being Janet doesn't outwardly treat him like a jailer so much. I mean, she's kind of like, my prison is the past, so it is what it is, I guess. And then, he gets apparently killed. He gets shot in this second Operation Midnight. The jury's still out on that guy, but I have some thoughts, Paul. I got some thoughts.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Because we learn a lot more in this episode about Robin Lerner.
Yes.
We know we saw him in 2012. He's walking around the Lazarus Project. We're like, sir?
Yeah.
So he's a higher up at the Lazarus Project.
Yep.
As we know, after this incident happened, he stops taking Wes's calls because I think he rightly figured out, that's why the attack happened. She's spying on me. And then he goes to the bunker for the time, and then she tells the rest of the Lazarus Project, he committed suicide. But that scene, the conversation they have, Wes and Robin, I'll call him Robin.
You're close.
Yeah, Lerner, Robin, I don't know. He's like, who gets the first name, who gets the last name? Anyway, very familiar, right? They're using pet names for each other.
Yes.
So
I heard something about him being jealous. Like, what is that? Did they have a relationship at one point?
Are they in a relationship? Were they married and are divorced? Are they... Like, they felt like a couple, in some form of a relationship.
Right.
Whether they've had one and it's old now.
I think that's probably the case.
Okay. So, that's what I got out of it. If that's the case, I'm doing a little 2+2 here, Paul.
Okay.
Let's remember earlier in the season, I had similar thoughts about Lerner and Bryson.
Right.
I'm like, boy, it seems like he's awfully like paternal to Bryson.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible Wes and Lerner are in a relationship and there's potentially a kid that one of them has? Could it be that Wes is Bryson's mom?
Interesting.
Just throwing that out there.
Could be, you know. That might be something that they're, setting up.
It would give him a lot more importance. He already has importance because he was the trusted guy that went back with Janet. Yeah. I get that. But like, he's really important to the story. He's time jumping.
Yes.
He's got some kind of huge vendetta against George. And I'm just wondering if maybe part of his importance in this is he's related, not just to Lerner, but maybe to Wes as well. I was thinking he was like a Lerner kid, but now I'm like, wait, is it? Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So, Dr. Gray's obsession, we learn why she is obsessed with time travel.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's a story behind her deciding to do it, that they told us that story. It's kind of hard to imagine that we won't see some aspect of that again.
Right. It's the
Chekhov's
you name drop.
backstory.
Yep, Chekhov's Charlotte.
Yeah.
So she had a very close friend, companion, somebody named Charlotte, who apparently died of cancer. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure, is her intent to create time travel to take Charlotte into the future where medicine is improved? Or like to go to her really early pre-diagnosis and go, you should get tested. Yeah. Or I don't know. I mean,
I know.
I'm not
it's
sure
hard to see how time travel relates to that.
Right. It's cancer. It's not like she was hit by a car and if I just show up and whatever. So okay. That's a trickier one. But that's kind of, that's her modus operandi. We get that little scene where Janet takes her back to her quote-unquote family, and they play little, games.
Yes.
And it humanizes Dr. Gray, and it's going to make it tougher for her to attempt to kill her. Mm-hmm. All these people are being driven by, the love of someone else, it seems like.
Yes.
George's whole thing was, I love this woman who died, and I'm going to fix it.
Right.
Charlotte, I love this woman who died, and I'm going to fix it. Or, excuse me, Dr. Gray, I love this woman who died, I'm going to fix it. Reberoff, I love this woman, like having the kid over and over again. Ross and Archie, there's a bit of a, she was desperately in love with this guy. She plays by the rules in that situation, but Ross
right.
didn't.
Ross, lost her, so he decided to. I mean, I think we're assuming maybe that he blackmailed Wes into doing that, and Wes got her revenge by getting him killed.
Yep, I think that's what the show is telling us. Yeah, that's the inciting incident for people to do something they might not otherwise do. Yeah, this time travel thing, boy, it is opening a can of worms. They're showing the can of worms that Wes is worried about.
That must be like, after watching the show, you're almost like, she's got a point.
Which, not only does she have a point, but you're like, and how do you do a show at this point? So there has to be a limit on this. Somehow this is not going to go well in terms of like, and now time travel's for everyone. That's not going to happen. So I'm not sure in what context this falls apart, but somehow it's going to fall apart. But yeah, you've got the team back in 2012. That means that at least part of the team, there's not a 2012 Lazarus Project Sarah, but there's a 2012 Lazarus Project Reberov. There's a 2012 Lazarus Project Shiv. There's a 2012 Lazarus, those kind of folks.
Yeah.
So we know for a fact that in the trailer we saw Reberov facing off with himself. So I assume in our next episode we're going to see them squaring off with their counterparts.
Sure. You still under the impression that they're going to be opposed to each other?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay, so that's why they're sitting around tables. Like, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Well, that's true. I don't know from the trailer. I couldn't tell you, but I just feel like you got to have conflict. I feel like if they're like, let's all be helpful to each other and solve this problem, I feel like there has to be somebody has to be like, whoa, this is wrong and boo. I mean, there's got to be, right? There's got to be.
I don't know.
Maybe it's everybody against Wes. I don't know, but I feel like
I mean, certainly one thing you can have is some people might be doing actions and they might not survive, and so depending upon which version,
sure,
right,
great point. 2012, whatever, Sarah died, then 2024 Sarah wouldn't exist probably,
right? So
unless you go to another reality,
which one would get killed, because one thing I was thinking of watching this thing, obviously they're trying to keep it from happening, so maybe since their intention is to go and save Janet, that I wasn't necessarily convinced that Janet didn't survive that particular thing.
The other thought I had was the Lazarus Project folks are conditioned to, hey, whenever we push the button and we go back to that set point, reset, we remember stuff. Mm-hmm. But this type of reset is different. This type of time travel is different than the resets from the Lazarus Project. Do they still remember everything that occurred in a reality that gets wiped away by this other form of time travel? I guess I don't know the answer to that.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot riding on this event, obviously, which is why it's taking a number of episodes to sort of
right. This is the season, right? I feel like this is this is what they're focusing on.
It's not a coincidence. It's towards the end of the season.
So there are 3 episodes left, and it's an exciting time travel story that only promises to get more convoluted here as we. So they got to keep the reins on, as you said. The writers in the writers' room got to be like, okay, do the wait, don't forget that. Oh God, we can do the thing. I do appreciate this, for instance. Dr. Gray. I think they gave enough of Dr. Gray being a little suspicious.
Yes.
Of Janet, because my first thought was, oh come on, like I'm working on time travel. I've gotten pretty close actually. We're just a few problems. Suddenly, mysterious stranger shows up, and I have 10 years worth of research. Huh? I wonder if maybe my time travel worked. You know what I mean? Like it would occur to the time travel person that maybe. Anyway, so I'm glad that they at least gave enough hints in there that she wasn't just like, oh, okay. I think she was trying to put 2 and 2 together in her
mind. She was rightfully suspicious of it, even though it's sort of like, I'm giving you the answers that you want. It's like, whoa, you're right, you are.
Right. It was like, I'm not sure, I don't understand exactly how you know this.
Yeah.
I feel like there's probably something, maybe a little fishy going on, but it is the answer, so yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
So I preferred that. I liked that as opposed to just her blindly accepting this person just walks in and hands her stuff and like, okay, great. No follow-up questions.
That she, so, and you could argue that she didn't understand that because the way she was talking to Janet was not like, oh, this is you from the future. It's like, why are you doing this?
Yeah. No, I agree that it was. Maybe she thought of her more as like an industrial espionage kind of thing, as opposed to from the future. But I could imagine it might have occurred to her that, I think it. Anyway, so but I appreciated that they made her at least a little suspicious and not just oblivious. So good job on the writers on that one. Well played.
Yep.
Well, we will be back talking about episode 6. Thanks as always, Paul. Appreciate it, good sir. And we'll talk to everybody next time. Bye.